because, this is something that you're just, 1 minute, sometimes it gives you a notice, sometimes it doesn't. But, I could be seated here and within 5 minutes, I'm in a position where I can't talk, I can't walk, I can't stand, I can't do anything for myself. So you can imagine, how anybody would survive that without a support system, not just physically, because you can't move, but, even emotionally, for someone to tell you that there's a reason for this, someone to try to help you understand, because, again, sickle cell could set in from, like, when you're 1. How would a child understand this is, a bigger plan, this is, it happens. A child doesn't understand that. So you need so much support, people to be there to tell you it's okay, people tell you that, there's nothing wrong with you, God doesn't hate you. You really need to understand that, because if you don't, then you'll be in a situation where, physically you're suffering, but then emotionally you're all messed up because you feel like a victim, you feel cheated, and then you could even lose your faith. And, I think that would have been the worst tragedy. So literally whenever I'm sick, basically everyone's life comes to a standstill. And there's another part of that, because you feel guilty. You're like, my sister's missing work, my mom's missing work. You feel guilty, but in the end, it's for you, and you're not left alone. And when you can't move, there's someone to move you. When you can't stand, there's someone to help you up. You can't even eat, but there's someone to feed you. It's a lot when you think about it, and to them, it's nothing. Because you're feeling bad, I'm so sorry, can you go to work? And they're like, are you crazy? So it's just so deep, it's so profound, it's something a nurse who doesn't know you cannot do for you. And it made a lot of difference. So it was, you cannot put a price tag on it. So the story had to be a family story. Yeah.
And you, Samira?
My family was everything when I was going through the journey. I don't explain it because I've been in hospitals around the world alone. There have been times when I went in for surgery and I was alone with no one to hold my hand or calm me down. I've been in different countries, in different hospitals for months, years, and so many of the major events of that happened while I was alone. For example, the second time my bone marrow transplant almost failed, I was alone. When I was told that I had a lesion in my liver in Israel, I was alone. But at the same time, the support I get from my family also surrounds me, because physically I'm alone, but deep down inside they're with me, and my dad always tells me, you will never walk alone. I'm always here at 2 a.m. or 5 p.m. And he blows up my phone every time I'm out of the country. I'm like, can you chill or go to work or do something with your life? Stop calling me up. Fine. But yeah, I think my family's support is one of the reasons why I wanted to survive, because when it all went downhill, I was just 15 and I didn't understand it. At that age, life was still peachy for me, so I didn't understand what was going on with my health, with my body. Life, as I knew it, was over. And there were so many times when I wanted to give up, when even the doctors weren't sure if I was going to make it or if I was ever going to walk again, where I just felt like, can it just end? But my family, they were the reason why I wanted to keep trying, because I'll make a list of the people who get affected if I don't make it. And when I list them all, despite the fact that I was going through hell, I couldn't put them through hell, because my dad fights so fiercely for me. And I always tell people, I don't think there's any man in this world who will do the things he did, because he literally moved mountains for me. He'll take me to a hospital where doctors will say, sorry, Mr. Sanusi, we can't help your daughter. And he'll be like, fine, let me find somewhere else. Sometimes I don't even know where he finds this hospital from. Like, for example, when he was telling me I was going to Israel, I'm like, what? What's happening there? How did you even think about Israel? So, and I also wonder if the roles were reversed, would I have been able to give the sacrifices that he gave? Would I have done what he did? Am I capable of that? And it's something that I went through, but they also went through it with me. They were also affected. And at the end of it all, they were there with me to celebrate me and to help with whatever came after, like the PTSD. So for me, my family were the reason why I chose life.
Amazing. Now, to segue to your story, Samira, you mentioned that when you were 15, that was when everything went downhill. I wanted you to sort of explore, first, for the people who haven't read the book, what happened, and then how did what happened make you feel? Do you still have some leftover anger? And how do you process that sort of situation now and then?
Okay, so what happened was I had the normal crisis that sickle cell patients have, and it usually goes away with maybe a painkiller, antibiotics, and fluids. So July 1st, 2003, I woke up with crisis. And funny enough, it just started on my arm. So I went with the driver to the hospital to see the family doctor. He gave me some medication, and then we left for a family trip to my hometown. By the time we got to my hometown in Funtua, I wasn't getting any better, so I decided to go to the clinic there. I got there, the doctor looked at me without carrying out any tests or examinations. He ordered the nurse to give me injections for typhoid fever and other stuff. And then I went home. And that was the last time I walked on my own. The next day, I was getting worse, so we went to a different hospital, and we were told that the medication, the injections I had received the night before were wrong, and they needed to be flushed out of my body immediately. It took us 2 months, or a month, I think, to realize that the damage had already been done, that my hip joints and my knee joints were already destroyed, because I was starting to have a vascular necrosis, which is a complications of sickle cell disorder, and I stopped walking, I stopped sitting, I stopped moving. I was just bedridden, and it was so hard because I didn't understand why this crisis wasn't going away after a couple of days or a week. And
what about the surgery?
I had the surgeries, but they didn't really help. I had 3 surgeries in one day, and they didn't really help the situation. I was just getting worse. And the worst part of it was the doctors were lying to my family and telling them that the situation was under control, or that I was getting better, or I was going to get better. And when I wasn't getting better, they told my dad that it was because I wasn't cooperating, because I was always crying during physiotherapy or when I was being moved. So I'm angry. I've been angry. I think I'm angry every day of my life because they did this to me. They couldn't take care of me or deal with my medical issue, but they kept me in the hospital for months, telling me that I was going to get better, and telling my parents that they didn't need to take me anywhere else, or that it was my fault that I wasn't getting better. And I said, how does a 15-year-old girl choose to stay in the hospital? I love school. I was starting SS1. I wanted to go to school. You think I chose this life? You think anyone will choose to stay in a hospital bed, bedridden? And no one listened. At that point, my family and I weren't on the same page. I was misunderstood, and I was being blamed for something that I didn't even under early stages. And
you mentioned that the closure and the process of that, and how you really wanted to get closure from both doctors, the doctor in Funtua and the doctors at the
you had to do, because you put me on a wheelchair for 6 years. I had to undergo at least 12 surgeries just to learn how to walk again. I had to undergo so much pain, hours of physiotherapy and physical rehabilitation. It was the same year the doctor died, and I couldn't get my answers. So I just had to live with not knowing and not understanding, but making peace with what had happened. I dream about shooting him every day. Like, people see me as this calm, innocent, quiet soul, but I always tell them deep inside, if I let her out, because there's been so much pain, so much trauma, so much damage, so much anger that sometimes I feel like I'm going to explode. At the same time, I don't want to, because this ugly thing happened to me, and my first priority to myself is to turn it into something beautiful and magical.
So, Maryam, you chose to write your own story as fiction. I was curious about why you did that. Nadia is amazing and funny and has fire. I want to know if Nadia is Maryam, or how much of Nadia is a Maryam, and how much of Maryam is a Nadia, and if the reason why you chose a fictionalized personal story is to protect Maryam, or what were your reasons for choosing fiction instead of a memoir?
Well, so many reasons. First of all, I love reading fiction. I just love how you can, toy with the characters, and I love fiction. That's my best thing to read. And I've tried reading memoirs. I think I've only succeeded in reading one. I just find the lack of, imagination, it's something that happened, so I find it a little tedious. So for one, I just felt when I wrote Burning Bright, I think I was 22. So I was like, who wants to read the memoir of a 22-year-old? If I were to pick a memoir of a 22-year-old, my first, what I would think first is like, what have you seen? What do you think is worth sharing? Fiction would enable me to tell more facets to it, because there are so many facets to sickle cell anemia. It affects you in so many ways. And you know what they call a textbook case, where anything that can go wrong goes wrong? I've seen such cases. I've seen cases that made me feel like I had a good. I've seen cases that made me feel like I had a bad. So I felt I wouldn't be doing, the whole purpose, which is to enlighten about it. I felt I wouldn't be doing it justice by telling my version, because there are so many bigger issues related to sickle cell that didn't happen to me. So how do I tell that if I'm telling my story? When I started it out, believe you me, Nadia was not supposed to be anything like me. But I once heard that your first book is usually, whether or not you realize it, a biography in some point. And I didn't realize it until years after I wrote Burning Bright. And people were asking me stuff. And it sounds like stuff about me. I'm like, wait, that's in the book? So I don't know how it happened. But if I have to say how much of me is in Nadia, maybe just 30%. A lot of the stuff were made up. It's literally classified as fiction if you look at it, but it's really more faction. It's this genre that is fiction but based on fact. It needed to be based on reality, because I don't want people reading and thinking, oh, she cooked up these lies, so it doesn't affect us. But these are things that are happening to other people. Like at the foundation, someone that was in a wheelchair because of sickle cell. I wanted to portray that. Because Nadia, she had her battles, but, she conquered. and she moved to Lagos, and she was working, but it's not the story for everyone. So I don't want people thinking that, oh, if you have sickle cell, well, you get sick, but you can move to Lagos and be successful anyway. So I didn't want that. So I wanted to paint other realer pictures, and fiction was what would allow me to do that. And then I also wanted fiction because, like I said, I find memoirs kind of tedious, and I wanted this to be entertaining, like you said. And I'm so happy you found Nadia funny and all that. So, that would keep you interested to take you all the way to the end. But in the end, it's not just entertainment. You learned so much about sickle cell. You have almost like a first-hand experience watching Nadia, second-hand, watching Nadia go through that. So it should be fun and educating, and that's why I picked fiction.
Absolutely. Thank you. So when people think about sickle cell warriors, there's a term that people use a lot called sickler. I'm always curious about what people who've lived with the disease think of that term. Is it a bad term? Is it a valid term? Is it a term that you'd answer to? I wanted you guys to sort of talk about that a little bit.
I hate the word sickler with a passion. And unfortunately, we live in a world where labels are everything. So if you're going to label me, don't call me a patient or a sickler. Call me a warrior, because every day of my life I'm on a battlefield. Every day I'm fighting for survival. I'm fighting battles that you have no idea about. I have survived things that people twice my age haven't even seen. So I refuse to be called a sickler. And it is not okay to call other people living with sickle cell disease sicklers. It's just not okay. Call them warrior or soldiers.
Okay, so I take the opposite kind of term, to that. It's weird. Because I sat down and I thought about it, and I said, the word sickler, it comes from sickle cell, right? And sickle cell is literally an explanation of what the cell looks like. A normal blood cell looks, circular. Ours is not complete, and it looks like a crescent moon, and it looks like a sickle. That's where it came from. However, sickler sounds like sick, and I think that's why people have a problem with it. But since I understand, it's simply just, it came from the description. It's not personal. I don't think it was personal when they coined it. It just happens to sound like sick. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I just feel it, it doesn't take anything from me. You don't call me a sickler and I just drop dead and I get sick. So for me, again, this is personal. But, if people don't want to be called sicklers, then don't call them sicklers. And, there's so many ways to be diplomatic about it. You could say just persons living with sickle cell. It's a mouthful, but, and yeah, warriors or soldiers, that is so apt because you have no idea what kind of battles they fight on the daily. So I think just what works for you. If you call me a sickler, I'm not going to be pissed because I just think it's literally from what it looks like.
So let's get into love, right? First question is how easy it is to date as someone while you were living with this disease, and what was the process? How easy was it to date? That's the first question. And the second question is, a lot of times when we're talking about preventing sickle cell disease, we say, know your genotype, right? Know your type, know your type. And the idea is if there are two people who carry the traits, who are AS, you're to break up immediately, right? So I've always, as someone who sort of went through that same situation earlier in my life, I was curious what you guys think about that. There's some people who would think that love conquers all, and love should conquer all. But on the other hand, it is a painful thing to sort of give your children. What are your thoughts? And also, there's a sense that when people say don't create children with, sickle cell disease? Are we saying that children with sickle cell disease are less than, children without? So I wanted you guys to explore those themes about prevention and love and things like that.
The thing about love is it really doesn't conquer all. I don't know where people get that from. It doesn't. Especially when it comes to medical issues. Because there's only so much your love can take. You need companionship, you need faith in each other, you need compromises, you need a whole lot of other things, and love is just one side. Now, when it comes to sickle cell anemia, every time I'm on the radio giving an awareness interview, there's always that one caller who will call in and say, I'm AS, the person I'm seeing is AS, and our love can weather any storm. And my answer to them is, sickle cell anemia isn't a storm. It's a hurricane. It is a hurricane, and your love really cannot conquer it, and it shouldn't. Because it's not just about the disease, it's a child who is going to be born with it. And I feel like it would have been easier if it's the parents who end up falling sick and getting sickle cell anemia. But unfortunately, it's the child, and before you bring your child into the world, you have already made a decision for them that you're going to be AS or SS or SC, and I find it cruel. No one should do that to a child. There's no child that will choose this life of pain. I didn't have a childhood. You know how people say, I wish I could go back to my childhood. I had so much fun, such fond memories and stuff like that. I don't. It's now in my adult years that I'm making my beautiful memories and having a life. I didn't have one before. So you shouldn't do that to a child. And when you're thinking about settling down with someone, you think about their character, personality, which faith they serve, where they went to school, which family they're from. And when you're thinking of having kids, you think about what's the best brand of Pampers to use, which school they should go to, how you want to raise them. And I think it's important as Nigerians that we take just one step back before we think about which schools we send our kids or which good brand of clothing or Pampers to give them. Let's think about the genotype, because that's going to give us an idea of what kind of life they will have, what quality of health. So before you seek out schools, look at their genetic combination first. Look at yours and know how it's going to affect their lives, because it's not about you and whatever lovey-dovey you're having with your spouse. It's about that child crying at 2 a.m.
And for you, the story was that the mom was tricked into marrying someone who was also AS. So she didn't actually make that decision. So your parents didn't know, right? And you're, in the story, Nadia's mom was tricked in the story, right? Did that, and you mentioned, the family got polygamous after a while in the story. Did that sort of affect, did the trickery in the beginning of the relationship and then the stress of having a child that was AS affect basically the breaking of the central marriage?
Yeah, so this is, Burning Bright was set in northern Nigeria, and so it was very important to depict the realities of northern Nigeria. There are so many issues, here that compound these kind of situations. So, for example, just having your genotype checked, and, I'm probably going to get attacked for this, but that's okay. I'm a warrior anyway. So what I'm saying is, what you see here is most churches, right, and religion has a whole lot to do. We're so religious, at least, lip service, we're so religious. So religion has a lot to do, with so many of your decisions. So when you look at churches, you go to so many churches, and the pastor says, I'm not going to, what do you call it, ordain this. You have to bring your HIV test, genotype test, things like that. They have gotten to that level, which is amazing, which is great. But we're lagging behind because, how do you explain to persons, and this is, this ties in with the conversations we had yesterday, who say, my daughter is only going to get married, she's not going to get to school. And I saw a clip, people were being asked about genotype, and they had no idea, and they're like, oh, I'm in support of genotype. What is genotype? And you're like, you're in support, because you don't know what it is. So how do you start telling that person, no, your child needs to check this, and they say it's a taboo. You want to bring shame. You want me to tell the husband to go and check his blood. So when you have things like that, it exacerbates the situation. So I really feel when you we've not gotten where we need to be when it comes to that, and it makes the situation worse, because when you don't have a basic understanding, I work with this foundation, and we've seen so many just despicable, disgusting things, really. When you're trying to explain to the man and the woman, this is what happened, that she got one S from you and one S from the mother, he's like, no, it's the wife. No, seriously, because this is our society. Everything bad is the woman. And this literally happens. And you see that, and he says, no, it's the wife. So, she's giving me bad children, so I'm going to get another wife. And then it might be, he might luckily get an AA wife, and he's like, you see, I told you. But he don't, so yeah, these are things that happen, and sometimes polygamy is brought about because of that. You thought, you didn't have to check your blood. Now you're suffering with these kids, medical bills, recession, everything is going crazy. I can't do this. I need a new start. I need a new wife. I need healthy kids. I can't deal with this. These are realities that we see in the North. And so that was why I had to depict this. These things actually happen.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think we've talked about the tough part of your story, but your stories, both of your stories, are stories of triumphs and freedom and hope. So I think that we will read excerpts from your books. So I think you guys can start. Samira, why don't you start?
Shortly after I started walking everywhere, my general well-being improved. The experience was bittersweet. 65. My walking wasn't perfect, and I still needed more therapy and surgeries to make it better. But in 2010, no doctor was willing to take that risk. My stay in London was clouded. I was in a constant state of confusion and uncertainty. I felt lost. It seemed like the end of the journey I had always dreamt of had finally come, but it was different from what I had dreamt it to be. I cried and prayed so many times for direction and peace. I had a problem with doctors telling me there was a way to help, only to later say I had to wait even longer or accept things as they were. How long was I supposed to wait, and what was I supposed to do while I waited? I had so many questions, and no one seemed to have the answers. My dad came to London a week later to visit us and discuss what was to be done. It was obvious that I couldn't have any surgery at the moment, and I had to continue with physiotherapy. The best thing to do was go back to school and continue living as best as I could, but I didn't even want to stay in London. The past years had been tough, and coming to a point in the road where nothing else could be done left me feeling overwhelmed, and I needed a break. I didn't want to live anywhere simply because the doctors I was seeing were based there. If I had to accept things the way they were, then it was time to start living the life I had imagined and dreamt of. It was time to start doing the things I loved, things I had put on hold for so many years because of my health. I wanted to do me, live life on my own terms, and not how my doctors thought I should live, or how my health status permitted me to. I decided to sign the divorce papers with my doctors and set myself free. After discussing my resolve with my father, we decided that I should apply for an undergraduate program in London and then go home. And when I say home, I mean home.
Okay, well, I have two parts I want to read. So,
We start with
okay. Okay. I'm reading from page 180. Nadia absolutely loved her job, and she was rapturous when she got the call telling her she was hired. The final round had been tougher than her worst imagining, but Nadia had pulled through. Stephanie had told her that her performance had been impressive. Her passion about her volunteering at the Sickle Cell Foundation and the fact that she had actually started volunteering there after the first interview had shown them rare passion. Stephanie said they needed that sort of fire at global marketing. Her new job made her sad only because she had to leave the foundation. It was a very emotional farewell for Nadia. Of course, she had known that she would move at some point or another, but it still hadn't prepared her for the reality of it. She sent monthly checks to the foundation, but she still longed to be there in person again. She was proud of what she had done the short time she was there. She spoke with Umma occasionally. The foundation's popularity only increased by the second, but there was always the bad news of the deaths of some of their patients. With a disease that greatly shortens lifespan, it was expected, yet greatly disconcerting. Nadia grabbed her bag and headed out of the office, closing the door behind her. Most people left their office doors open, and even though the doors were made of glass, Nadia always felt the need to close hers. She headed down the hall and asked everyone she saw if they had seen Chris. They had not. She was not really looking forward to seeing him after he had heard other versions of her first unaided client meeting, but she had to. "Where is Chris?" she asked herself, turning the other way. She heard footsteps behind her and turned around. It was Fuad. "Of course it was you. Who else would be talking to themselves?" he asked. "Hello to you too. Have you seen Chris?" "No, I have not. Why are you looking for him?" "It's privileged information," she said, putting her phone to her ear. "Hi, Chris. I need to step out for something to ingest. I am all out in the fridge. Do you want something?" "Okay, thanks. Bye." She turned and found Fuad still there. "Don't you have work to do?" "Please, who says something like ingest? No one. Is that even English?" He looked at her incredulously. "You are stepping out for food." "That is really privileged," he said sarcastically. "You eavesdrop instead of work. That is really low. And if you understood what I said, what's your problem? I still remember my biology. Ingest, ingest, ingest," she shrugged. "Where are you headed?" "For food with you, apparently," he said, and walked behind her. Nadia hated it when guys walked behind her, because unless they were gay or blind, she thought it was an excuse to look at her behind. There wasn't much to see because all the clothes she wore to work were extremely baggy and hid most of her wide hips and averagely sized behind, but she still did not like it. She hated the thought of anyone staring, even more now because of her limp. When they got to the reception, she stopped so they could walk side by side. Let me stop here.
As you can see, both books are amazing. So I hope all of you guys get a copy. All right, so I wanted to talk about, so after this question, then we'll open the questions to the floor, about bone marrow transplant, right? So I'm assuming Nadia got one, Or did you get one?
Neither.
Neither?
Neither.
Okay. You talked about that you beat sickle cell. What does that mean?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
In the blog, in your book, you said that you had beat sickle cell. What did that mean to you?
Oh, here, right? Yeah. Here? Oh, when it says survivor, literally what it means is, what I mean that I'm a survivor, it means that it hasn't killed me yet. As sad as that sounds, just, everywhere you see people that, it has physically, impacted, and let me not say yet, I hope it doesn't do that to me. So what I mean by survivor means I'm still alive with sickle cell, and that is being a survivor because it hasn't killed me yet. That's what I mean. So it's not like her. It's not like I got my genotype changed.
Samira, you had the transplant. First, talk to us about what the transplant is, what it does for you, and I was curious about your thoughts around getting that to more people in Nigeria. A few years ago, someone said the best gift Nigeria can do to the world is to ensure that people with sickle cell are cured. And at the moment, bone marrow transplant is the only cure. What are your thoughts around getting that more widely available? And is this something you're working on?
So a bone marrow transplant is the only known cure for sickle cell anemia at the moment. And basically what it does is you need a donor who has healthy cells, and then that donor has to be matched with you to donate. So it's basically genetic engineering. So what it means is we all have our bone marrow, which is like a factory that produces our cells and distributes throughout our body. Now, in a sickle cell warrior, your bone marrow transplant makes the sickle cells, or it can't make it as fast as it should. When you get a new bone marrow, it's hard to explain. So it's supposed to basically kick out your cells and then take over your body. So before the transplant, I had chemotherapy because my immune system needed to be crushed so that my body doesn't fight against the new cells. After the chemotherapy, I lost all my hair, by the way. The doctors lied. So after the chemotherapy, then I got the bone marrow from my brother, who was a match. And the procedure is easier with less chances of rejection if you have a sibling donor. Unfortunately, the chances of you having a sibling donor is just 30%. So I was lucky that I had a donor. My younger brother donated. And so the bone marrow is basically like blood, but thicker. So you get it intravenously, like you're getting a blood donation. When I was having my bone marrow transplant, I was in the middle of my physiotherapy, and I thought, wow, this life-changing thing is happening, and it's not even that dramatic. It's not like going in for surgery or being open up for open heart surgery. It's just flowing through my veins, and I sat down and tried to imagine what was going on inside my body. And at the same time, I was helpless because I had fought for so long, and there was nothing for me to do but to let my body fight its own battle, and I couldn't have a say in it. So the blood was dripping, and I was like, please work, and then I was cheering them on like, yes, yes, go make magic happen. So it was amazing, and after getting the blood, I had to wait for 100 days to start finding out whether or not it was working, and I rejected twice, but fortunately it wasn't 100% rejection, but ultimately I got cured. I'm AA now, and I've been cured since 2004. I don't talk about being cured a lot because I feel guilty. When I was living with sickle cell anemia, the only other person I knew living with the disease was my sister. So it was lonely. I also didn't know much about the disease I was living with. There was no support groups, there were no counseling, there was nothing. The only thing I knew was that I was sick, or I was a sickler. That was my first identity. So when I moved back to Nigeria, that was when I even started knowing about what really is sickle cell anemia and how it happened and the different kinds of genotype and stuff like that. And I realized that so many people were living with this disease and they couldn't even afford folic acid or the other medication that they need to be taken daily. And I felt lucky, blessed, and privileged that I had been to at least 7 countries and I had undergone countless treatments and I had survived and I was walking away and people couldn't afford just folic acid. And then the second part was the fact that so many people didn't know that there was a cure. And we didn't either before because what we knew was that there was no cure and we had to live with it for the rest of our lives. Till my dad took me to Austria and they said, oh, we actually have a cure and we can help your daughter. So I wanted to tell people that, hey, there's a cure now, there's hope, and that maybe we're all going to be okay. But deep down inside, I was also scared because it's not accessible and it's not affordable. How many people can go to Austria for a bone marrow transplant? And how many people can afford it? Because at the moment in Austria, it's 140,000 euros. So this is a fight that I can't fight alone, and we need everyone on board and the Nigerian government, because I think one of the most important reasons why it's so expensive is the fact that they are treating our own disease. If we invest in research, science, and technology, we can make it easier, we can make it affordable, we can make it accessible. But they're fighting their own disease. Austria doesn't even have that many sickle cell patients. When I was having my transplant, all of us were either African or Middle Eastern. So I felt like it's the responsibility of us and the Nigerian government to take care of these people, to legislate prevention, control, management, and treatment and cure for people who are living with this disease. People who sometimes don't even know that they're living with a disease, because when we go for community outreaches, we meet young girls and boys or families who are told that they're Ogwanje or they're living with some random disease. They don't even know that what they're living with has a name. They don't know that this is what they need to do to take care of themselves or to manage the situation. And then here I am, and I'm cured. And every day I lose my friends to the disease, I lose family, I lose sickle cell warriors, and I feel like it's not really a win yet because so many others are still on the battlefield.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, so and I just want to say, you wanted to tell us there's a cure, and you did that beautifully as a first survivor. When I read that, I don't know how many times I cried, but it wasn't so much for the sadness, but for the hope that your book gave. And trust me, people know more about it thanks to you. So you achieved that. And what I want to say is what is being done, it's not a lot, but that should not be surprising. You know, it's Nigeria. That's how we work. But to be very honest, I've been trying to get the government to declare a state of emergency on sickle cell. Like I told them, this was in 2015. I told them, I said, it's long overdue. This is 2017 and nothing has been done. And again, I think this is the perfect forum. Anybody in here who has any capacity of being listened to, You write a letter as an ordinary citizen. It probably sits on the floor. Nobody reads it. If there's anyone here that feels they have any capacity to be listened to, I'm trying to get the government to, declare a state of emergency on sickle cell like it was done for HIV. And let me tell you, it has been done. Bone marrow transplant has been done right here in Nigeria. We have this very smart doctor, we're really smart. He went and he learned it and he came back and he's done it in Nigeria. But it's very slow because it's very expensive and there are no facilities, so he's able to do one per year. And that's not. So we're just trying to get the capability so that we can do more and then, like she said, domesticate it and make it affordable to our people, because I eat well, let alone afford the drugs, let alone afford health care when you're sick. So I say this, and it still counts, whatever impact we can make. If it's not felt at the grassroots, as far as I'm concerned, it's useless. So anybody, you can locate me. I'm the person with the fascinator. Please, if there's any way you can help, any ideas you have, we're trying to do this. I spoke to the president's wife. That was in 2015, and she said she would establish 2 centers in Gombe and Kaduna to be doing the cure. I wrote a reminder 2 years later, and I didn't hear back. So I'm just looking for, people who will be listened to so that we can make this happen. So please find me. Let's talk.
All right, we have 5 minutes, so I can only take 20 minutes. Oh, awesome. All right, so I think I can take more questions. Please keep it short. Just get to the question. So, Pearl?
Wow. Okay, perfect.
Okay, you go.
Okay.
You go there, Pearl.
It's quite an extraordinary story you guys have here. I'm a doctor, so I actually work in, and I remember once where I had to treat a child who was she was 4, and I was the only doctor around, and they checked her PCV and it was 7%, and she was.
What does that mean?
7% packed cell volume. 7% it was very low. It meant that she didn't have
enough blood.
Yes, and she was she was going to failure. And then I found out that, her mother was not anywhere to be found, and I had to give my own blood. And it was quite an experience that made me write a lot about sickle cell in my poetry and all. And just about a week ago, I found out that my uncle, who was my mom's brother, started having retinal bleeds. It was bleeding into retina. And this is someone who nobody knew had sickle cell. And suddenly, we just found out that, yes, his genotype is SC. And he asked me that will he be all right? And as a doctor, I didn't even know what to tell him. I didn't know what exactly I could say because, I knew what this meant. Like once you get to a certain age, some things would happen and all that. So I just want to say that you guys, I'm very happy that you're fighting this. And I hope that this forum is going to be a place where some more things will be done and then we can be able to raise our voice and get the government to do what is needful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Samira and Maryam, thank you for choosing to fight, to survive, and beyond that, for writing these incredible books you've written. I can't express how I feel. I've just been frozen sitting here and listening to both of you, and I'm deeply touched by this and your stories. I would like to ask, but before I ask my question, let me just say this very quickly. I know this couple, we grew up together, and they're divorced now. They were married for just about 2 years, and then they had a baby, and the baby was, or is, SS, or living with sickle cell, and the story unraveled that the woman knew that she was AS, and she knew that her husband was AS, and so she lied. So it was very deliberate because she thought she would be among the people who would lock out, because we know the calculations with genetics, but it didn't turn out that way. Their very first child East SS, and he couldn't take it. And he just left the marriage and treatment and all of that. How far-fetched is it to criminalize deliberately creating children with this disease? Because, I mean, that's my question. How far-fetched is this? Thank you.
There's someone back there at the last.
Hello?
Mike?
It's with me?
Wait, there's a young man. We'll take it together and then they will answer.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the books, because I really enjoy all the books, both of them. Especially As for Survival. I always read it every year just for encouragement and inspiration. But I have two questions for you, and one is more of a comment. The first one is, like when I was reading, especially Maryam's book, I wanted to know, like, from a Muslim woman, like there are things that you have to do as a Muslim, like your prayers, your fasting, and I just wanted to see how the experience would be. Like you mentioned a lot of crisis and all those things that are peculiar to SS. So I wanted to, like, it was a missed opportunity for me because I wanted to have gotten an insight on that and how you are able to navigate through prayers and your fasting and all those other worships. And my second question is, and I say this with all sense of responsibility. Here in the North, we have a sense of hypocrisy when it comes to our scholars and our Muslim scholars, whereby we choose to use Islam as a defense mechanism. Where things don't go our way, we use Islam to negate it. And when to enforce something, we use Islam to do so. And even though I'm not a liberal in any way, Islam is not flexible, but it is accommodating, which means when it comes to issues of health, in most cases, Islam will always accommodate it. So you always find scholars that will say that given the fact that Islam says you can marry whoever you want, then issue of regulating someone based on their genotype should not be an issue, then they should not even try to stop it. So once you hear someone that is trying to make laws against it, you find that conscious scholars that will stand up and start talking against you that you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. But the issue is, you can't really walk against scholars here in northern Nigeria because if you have 10 people that will listen to you today on social media, you can have one scholar that will go to a mosque and have like 500 rural people that will listen to him. So if you have someone like that working against you, it's really not going to work. So my question is for Samira. I know you've all been working with advocacy for a while now. Have you been able to work with any scholar, any renowned scholar in the North? If you haven't, do you have any plans on doing so? Because I think if you have ambassadors that are scholars, it will really go a long way. And if you're having a lot of pushback from them, then I think more dialogue and debates with them will really go a long way. Because if people are seeing you as doing something against Islam, especially when they are preaching against you, then you're really going to have more of the rural people not adhering to the sickle cell awareness and all that. Thank you.
Samira and Maryam, your stories are very touching, and the first thing I will say is I'm very glad that Samira is cured, and I hope Maryam too will be cured in time, inshallah. Secondly, if I want to contribute to this sickle cells issue, how do I get...
In the bookshop, so everyone that loves the story, make sure you grab a copy at the bookshop. The second room on the right. First room on the left when you come in. Okay, I think we'll answer those questions, and then if we still have time, I'll get more questions. Okay?
Okay, so about criminalizing it, you're spot on. I see nothing wrong with that. But it should be criminal for you to knowingly bring in a child in 2017 to go through all of these things when we don't even have a cure. Mind you, if we have a cure, how long is it going to take to cure all the millions we already have? So some months back, actually, Kaduna State, I don't know about the rest of the country, the rest of the states, Kaduna State passed a bill criminalizing that, but the problem with us is following up and ensuring that it's followed. And I'm just thinking, if it's criminalized, how do you enforce it? It's so easy for you to pay a lab to give you a fake test. So there's still those issues of, following up and making sure, but, in paper, it has been criminalized. I just wish we were a country that could, follow through with our laws, but, for the paper part, it has been done. So I just wanted to let you know it has been criminalized. And yes, please, 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 let's not say love or any other reason. Let's not be selfish. We already have the highest population. We can't make it any worse.
Samira?
Regarding praying and stuff like that while I was going through my journey, I think I didn't talk about it enough, but at the same time, being close to God at that time we weren't really friends. So for the first few months, I used to pray just by eye signals because I couldn't move any part of my body at all. So anyone could be in my hospital room with me and I'll just go quiet. But I wouldn't be moving at all. And then when I'm done, I'll be like, oh, sorry, you were talking to me. I was praying. That was the only way I could pray. And then when I was undergoing my transplant and the first time my body rejected it, I remember losing faith. Because I just felt like, why would God bring me to this if he doesn't plan on seeing me through it? Why will he let me go through all of this? I had so many questions because I didn't understand what I was going through, and I felt like I was being punished for something wrong that I had done. And I couldn't quite see the purpose for the pain and everything like that yet. So I remember losing faith, and there was a time where I stopped praying completely, which doesn't make sense because I come from a very religious background. My family are all Malams and Malamas. But yeah, that happened, and it made it even worse because I had nothing to hold on to. So I was like, well, this not praying thing and not believing thing is not really working, so maybe I should go back to him and remake up. And then down the line, when I was discharged and I was an outpatient, there was this time where my friend had an event in church, and she invited me. I have so many Christian friends, and I know a lot of choir songs and gospel music. I love them, so I followed her. We ate rice and chicken. And then the pastor stood up and he was praying for people, calling people to come forward and so that he can bless them and pray for them. And people were just going to the front, and he was pretty much performing miracles because there was this person that suddenly said he was able to see again, and then another person said they could walk again. And I sat there in my wheelchair, which I called Maybach, by the way. I sat on my Maybach and I was thinking, should I go so that he can pray for me also? And my friend was like, Sam, go so that he can pray for you. You've been fighting for so long. This is your break. And I'm like, okay, well, I've been fighting for a long time, and it was around the same time that the doctors weren't also sure what the next step they should take was, and it looked like walking was never really going to happen after all. And I just sat there and I'm thinking, okay, so what if I go and then he prays for me and then I start walking? Which faith do I now practice? And does that make me a traitor for leaving Islam because things were too hard and I switched to the other side? And what happens if something happens again? Do I now go back to Islam or choose another religion? So I think that was the hardest decision I ever made in my life, to just sit there, and I wanted to go home, I wanted to walk again, I wanted to survive, I wanted my life back, but at that moment I couldn't leave. And now we're best buddies with God. I talk to him like he's my best friend. He's my best friend. So, yeah, I don't think I was devout Muslim while I was going through it because there was a lot going on. But now, I don't know how to explain. Like, I've been through things that only he understands. And I look at my life and I'm like, wow, he did that. Like, look at God. And I was on a wheelchair for 6 years. And now I drive my own car. Wow. Like, how magical is that? Look at all the victories and the wins and everything. And yeah, the doctors did their part. My dad did his part with supporting me and paying the bills, and I did my own fighting, but it wouldn't have been possible without him.
Okay. You want to add to that?
I don't think we have time, so maybe we can just take one question each instead of answering one question, both of us.
Right.
So I'll just go to the next one. He was asking about how has the fight been with, imams and religious preachers. It's up and down. Some understand it. Off the top of my head, I'm very forgetful, so I can't remember some of their names. But we have some on board, and they understand, and they actually take out time to preach and tell them that, Islam didn't say go and, hurt somebody. It's not allowed for you to even hurt yourself. So how can Islam tell you to hurt your kid? It's not possible. Sheikh Gumi, I'm very sure he's very, very adamant on that. And as you can imagine, he received so much backlash. They're telling him he's a traitor. It's going to be tough, because we have a large population of Muslims up north. And, anything a preacher says is, sacred. They don't want to go against it. So some are on board, some are not, but it's a continuing battle. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And then maybe you can answer how she can get in touch with us.
I also wanted to add the fact that, like she said, a few religious scholars are on board. I think 2 years ago on World Sickle Cell Day, we held a seminar in my hometown in Funtua, and the chief imam came out to talk and give some Islamic backing on why it is indeed important to get tested and know what you're getting yourself into, because the whole basis of marrying in Islam is for the kids, the community, expanding and everything like that. So ultimately, your children are supposed to be the coolness of your eyes. You pray that your children are the coolness of your eyes. Now, when you have kids intentionally living with sickle cell anemia, they're not really, it's hard. And then I remember my parents would always tell me that taking care of my sister and I, there were times when they couldn't even practice their faith. Like, you're in the hospital all day and you even forget to pray, and then afterwards you start catching up on your missed prayers and everything like that. So practicing your own faith and religion even becomes hard, because you're just dealing with this one thing. So yeah, a few of them are on board. There's also one in Jos. We were once on a BBC Media Action interview with him, and he spreads awareness in his mosque and everything like that. And we hope to get more people. And Hajia Hafsat mentioned how she can get in touch with us if she wants to support the course. I'm the founder of Samira Sanusi Sickle Cell Foundation. And our primary source of funding is through the book, S is for Survivor. The proceeds go to the book. So you can look us up. I can give you my number, or you can check us out on the internet, Samira Sanusi Sickle Cell Foundation. And there's so many other sickle cell organizations too here in Kaduna, in Abuja, everywhere. There's so many because there's so many sickle cell warriors. So just Google.
Since we're talking about Kaduna, since we're here, there's also a foundation here. And they're doing a month. When it's done, you go and get more, and that's called the Sickle Cell Patient Health Promotion Center. It's at Badarawa, and there's a website, www.sicklecellpatient.org, where you can donate, and also you can get my contacts. I'm around.
Yeah, I'm based in Abuja. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a last one. We have a comment from the overflow from Usman. Buyaje. Okay, Bugaji. All right, Usman Bugaji. Just to inform the audience that the ARDP is working with an American expert in the field of bone marrow transplant, and a group of medical doctors are bringing this treatment here in Nigeria. They will be using a government hospital in Jigawa. The team is in touch, is led by Dr. Hamid Dutsi. So, if you guys are interested in that, all right. So that's all. No more questions. Perhaps last word. There are many questions. Mike.
Hi. Okay. Very quickly. Yes. Sorry. You know, it's so overwhelming. This session is for me, actually. And my question is a bit sensitive, it's a bit personal, but I'll understand if you don't answer it. But as advocates for sickle cell, do you sometimes resent being the poster child, being known for just this disease? As humans, I know we're all, we're multifaceted, but we tend to think in labels and hashtags and things like that. Do you ever want to not just be known as, you know, Samira, the sickle cell advocate, or Maryam, the sickle cell advocate? Is it something you think about? Is it something you wish, or is it something you're very proud of? You know, that's my question.
Thank you.
I don't mind, because before I was a sickle cell awareness advocate, I was known as just being a survivor. And being a survivor is cool and everything, but after surviving comes overcoming. My problem was that I didn't want to be known as just a survivor. I wanted to do more, and I wanted to give back. So I think I'm okay with being known for sickle cell awareness, because I don't think anyone would go through what I went through for 7 years, the highs and lows, all the struggle and surgery and effort and energy, and then not do anything with that. So there's nothing else I'd rather do, and I don't even think I'm capable of doing other things. But apart from being known for fighting for the sickle cell cause, I'm also an author. I wrote Essays for Survivor, even though it's about sickle cell anemia. My second book will be out later this year. And I'm also a motivational speaker. So I'm trying to create a life that I'm proud of, that is not always about my past, but at the same time, my past is a great part of who I am today.
Okay, so just real quick, it's a little bit of both for me. She said, you know, is there any anger? Yes. As human beings, there's so much anger, and we see a whole generation of kids with so much anger, and you know, the African climb, you can't really express yourself. Maybe that's why I resorted to writing, but we see that, and it's normal, and it's human, and it's okay to be angry, really, because in the end, you're human, and you have feelings. If you know me as a cell girl, that's okay. For me, that's another form of
round of applause. Such courage. What's the next session called again? So the next event is towards religious tolerance in northern Nigeria. So I think this one's going to be very interesting. And as is our practice, so we can do a quick tidy up, I'm going to give you just 7 minutes to leave the room, please, so that we can tidy up.
sorry. If you're a guest and you have a blue tag, then you can stay. But if you have a green one, can you please just leave the room just very quickly so we can tidy up?